Welcome everyone. Keely McBride here, our operations manager in the Great Falls office, myself, David Carlson. We're with A2S and we're here to give you a tour today of the Rocky Boys water treatment plant. It's been a long time coming to be standing in the building that we're in today that we're excited to bring you on a tour for. There's a mission statement from the Chippewa Cree Tribe, which is the water is sacred. It gives life to everything. And that's a big thing that here at A2S and for the Rocky Boys North Central Regional Water Project as well. We really believe in that mission statement, that we're here to really change some lives for water. It is truly, it gives life to everything for us. Our journey didn't start here. Our journey included starting in Washington, D.C. to get the funding for this project to stand in the building that we're standing in today. There is so many people that have blazed so much trail that I think that is such a unique piece to this whole project, that of the amount of people that it takes. People in DC, our congressional representatives, it takes our tribal leadership and our non-core leadership folks traveling to DC, having those conversations.
So we're at the start of a plant where the raw water comes into the building. So this is where it all begins from the perspective of the water treatment plant. Although from here, it takes a while for water to get here. We initially, pull it out of the lake at the intake, and it actually travels, is it what, quarter mile to get here from the intake facility? And so, but this is where it comes in the wall and enters the plant.
This is where we're just starting our treatment process. So as we kind of walk through these piping, this is where the first primary chemicals are being dosed into the system. Ferric chloride, cationic polymer get dosed right into the very beginning. We're just mixing chemicals up before it goes up to then the next step, which is our flocculation process here at the plant. And one of the interesting things right out of the gate, out of this tour, when you get to see this clip, is you're going to find we're not actually moving water today. These basins are all dry, which is kind of a neat opportunity to be able to see the actual treatment plant before we're actually starting to treat water. As a part of this project, a very unique piece of it is that the water treatment plant takes a lot to get all of the pieces together, and the funding doesn't always necessarily line up with how fast we want to go, and it's been a big effort to get there. We're excited to be here, and in the building that we're in, there's also miles and miles and miles and miles of pipeline that need to get built. It's hard to tell right now, but we're actually standing in a very, very remote location, and the actual users that are going to drink this water, we're going to talk a lot about it, but there's about 60 miles away in the Bear Paw Mountains is where Rocky Boys Reservation is located. And Keely's project on the core pipeline is actually delivering water that will be treated here and convey that all 60 miles through gravity feed out of this facility here. So as those pipelines come together, we're kind of sequencing everything so it all ties together to be able to treat water when the pipelines are ready to move the water to users. And this is the very first step of the process where we're just introducing, and we've already introduced our rapid mix chemicals. We're just getting the water to coagulate, flocculate. We're getting those little dirt particles to all stick together and make bigger and bigger particles so they become more heavy. So as we walk through this process here, these big plates, these big flocculator paddle wheels move, and they gently agitate the water as it moves through the treatment process into these stages. So these are stages 1, 2, and 3. And then we move on to the next step. So now we're moving down, water's now moved down into pre-treatment train number 2. And so here water, we have a plate-assisted sedimentation process here. And so this is where we're actually removing the brunt of the turbidity. There's not a lot of turbidity in the lake, but there is a little bit. And so we're separating the particles that are dropping down. Clean water is rising up and going on to our next step, which is then the filtration process. As a function of this treatment plant too, is the fact that this whole facility is set up for 11 million gallons per day, is the building that we're standing in. And if we actually look at the roof line here, and you'll probably see it when we look at the outside of the building as well, This whole roof line is actually set up, we're actually looking at the first phase of this plant. And so this roof line, if you can kind of picture this whole building being mirrored on that side, there's actually a whole nother 11 MGD expansion facility that'll be eventually planned out for the next step. And as this whole Rocky Boys Regional Water Project grows and pipelines get completed and we need to treat more water, this whole building is set up to be expanded.
So as David mentioned, this plant is we're currently in phase 1 and someday there will be phase 2. And during design, that was something that AH2S put a lot of effort into planning for, is how do we look ahead for the future to make that expansion something easy to do. So what now today is just a really nice window with a beautiful view will someday actually be, these windows can be taken out and the second half of the plant will be built along this wall. And then this can be a set of large double doors, and this will someday be a hallway into the second plant. So I think what's important about filtration, this is one of the main steps for getting the rest of, particles out of the water when we think about, when you look in that glass and you want it to be clear. As David mentioned though, this plant is done in stages. So actually there is no sand or anthracite or any of those things yet in the plant. We don't want to let that sit while the pipeline is being built and we're waiting for the plant to be started up. And so they're ready and eventually that will be added later. But for now, it kind of gives you an opportunity to see a part of a filter that you wouldn't see when you go to most plants. Usually this is equipment that's underwater, under sand. It's a great opportunity to get into this plant now and be able to look at what it has.
So after our sand filtration process that occurred actually above where Keely and I are standing, water now is moved down, and what we're standing in front of here is the pipe gallery for all the filter operations. So each one of these pipes is actually color coded to represent where it's at in the treatment process. And so I would describe it as a mint green pipe above me is clarified water. It's not been filtered yet. As it works down through the process, we get into the blue piping, which is now filtered water. The brown pipes then are usually representing backwash waste. So that's water that's the particles that we've removed out of that fine filtration process. That's the water that we're sending back to be recycled through the treatment process. We'll see later on in this, when you see pipes that are the dark blue, for instance, that one there in the backwash supply, dark blue happens to represent treated water. So that is drinking water ready to go. So at this point, we're fairly close to being ready for drinking water. We just have yet to receive chlorine and secondary disinfection processes for us. So we're almost ready to have drinking water at this point in this pipe.
Other pipes down here too, as well as there's an air backwash. So that's part of the filters is, when you backwash them, you have a water backwash and then you have the air scouring as well. And then of course you can't miss the large panels that we have that control all of the different valves for the filters in the pipe gallery. And
so at every step of the way that we can, we build a little bit of flexibility, a future expansion here, or hey, maybe what if we want to run it that way one day in the future. So really unique aspect to the project as well. So after filtration, we're standing now in the finished water pumping room in front of our filter backwash pumps. So after so many hours of operations, our sand filters eventually need to be cleaned. And these pumps actually draw water from a big tank we're standing on. We're actually standing on the finished water tank underneath our feet here. This is where water down below in this tank underneath our feet is getting primary disinfection, and so we're achieving our contact time for primary disinfection, and then we're actually then dosing ammonia at the end for secondary disinfection to make chloramine disinfection to then send it out into the distribution system. We have a lot of space in Montana, and we have a lot of miles to convey water from this tank to people's taps. And so chloramines are one of our approaches to be able to have a long-lasting residual throughout the system for us. So these are vertical turbine pumps. They've got actually pumps and impellers that reach down and lift water from underneath our feet up into the sand filtration system above.
Another nice piece for this room too is if you look up, we have a overhead crane. That helps the maintenance team if they need to take a pump apart, replace a pump, they can easily utilize that as a tool to lift these up because they are, as you can probably guess, not a light item.
Our next step now, after we've gone through all of our treatment processes, we are finally at drinking water. And we're standing here in front of the finished water transfer pumping. And we're actually lifting water out of the tank underneath our feet up to a 3 million gallon ground storage reservoir, which is right outside a window right in front here. And that ground storage reservoir serves as the main hydraulic tank then that flows water all 60 miles through the core pipeline all the way to the Rocky Boys Reservation. So we're finally reached the last step in our treatment process, and we're officially at drinking water for us. So we're standing in front here is then the filter backwash reclaim basin. So all the water is part of our recycling approach. What we do, very common in water plants, but what we do is all the water that we clean off the filters can get recycled and reused and retreated. They don't actually have to go waste that water. We spent honestly a fair amount of electrical energy getting that water out of the lake up to here, and so we're actually saving a lot of power by recycling that water. And so all that water that we saw from those steps above actually comes down into this tank then, where it's allowed for another chance to settle. Then we are able to then recycle the clean water off the top of that water back up to the treatment process for us.
I would say that this project is everything to the Chippewa Cree Tribe. We even see it just from the fact that to them an important saying you'll hear regularly is that water is sacred and it gives life to everything. So this project has brought so many job opportunities for the tribe. The core pipeline is an entirely tribal crew, and right now they've actually doubled and they've started a second crew this year, which is really exciting.
We hear stories and people, they tell you stories about, people that live on Rocky Boys Reservation, they open their tap, water doesn't come out. They got a well they can't drink. The farmers out here, and people talk about hauling water, and you get a snowstorm, you can't haul water now. It's amazing how when you have a scarce resource in the upcoming years, when you're talking about an abundant resource, how that's going to change lives. It's amazing.